Ever looked at an anthill and thought, what's the story there?
Hmm.
Well,
Ah,
today,
yeah,
we're going full anthropologist on that.
I like it.
We're diving into the world of the red harvester ant,
Okay.
or Pogonomyrmex barbatus for the science folks out there.
Right.
We've got decades of research to unpack, so get ready for your ante to skyrocket.
Yeah, it's easy to underestimate ants, you
No,
know?
for sure.
But these guys, they have a social structure that rivals like a soap opera
Oh, really?
and a genetic system that's practically one of a kind.
Wow.
By the time we're done, you'll be seeing anthills in a whole new light.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
So picture this. Southwestern U.S., sun blazing, and this little reddish-brown ant, about the size of, say, a grain of rice.
Okay.
It's hustling across the sand.
Mm-hmm.
That's our star, the red harvester ant,
There you go.
named for their, their seed-collecting obsession.
Yeah, and not just any seeds. They're particularly fond of grass seeds. Think Aristida, Trichloris crenita, papaforum.
Wow, you really know your ant food.
Well, I did my research for this one.
Impressive.
Almost 90% of their diet is these specific seeds.
Wow, picky eaters.
Yeah.
But I guess when you're in a harsh environment like that, you can't afford to waste time on just any old snack, right?
Right, exactly. Efficiency is key.
Especially with competition.
Yeah.
Like, what was that one? The Epphenogaster cockerelli?
Oh, yeah, the cockerelli. They can be a real nuisance.
Kind of snag the good stuff.
Exactly. And speaking of competition, that's where their social structure gets really interesting.
Okay.
These ants live in colonies thousands strong, all with a single queen calling the shots.
Oh, wow. So it's like division of labor, right?
Yes, exactly.
I bet it gets pretty complex.
Oh, absolutely. You've got worker ants with specialized jobs, nest maintenance, patrolling, even midden work.
Midden work.
Yeah, essentially ant garbage duty. Not the most glamorous job, but hey, somebody's got to do it.
Right. Every job is important.
Exactly. And of course, the all-important foragers. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Their roles aren't set in stone.
Oh, interesting.
Studies show they adapt on the fly, based on food supply, the weather, even how close rival colonies are.
Wow, that's amazing. Talk about efficiency.
Right. They're like little organizational masters.
So adaptable. Didn't we read something about them? Don't they also have a tactic for dealing with, I think it was those Novomessor cockerelli ants
Oh, yeah.
that block their nests with pebbles? That's just rude.
It's brutal out there. Nest plugging, they call it.
Nest plugging, really?
Yeah, it's a classic example of ant rivalry, and it just shows how crucial each day's foraging is for these colonies. But even more remarkable is how they've evolved to thrive in these unforgiving desert conditions.
Right, right. Let's talk survival tactics, because from what I've read, these ants are incredibly sensitive to losing water.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Staying hydrated is key for them. Studies show their foraging habits actually change based on how much water they have.
Oh, well, really?
Yeah, when it's drier, some colonies will send out only their most drought-tolerant foragers
Oh,
to
interesting.
minimize risk.
Smart.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, these risk-averse colonies were often the ones more likely to have offspring colonies. It's this fascinating balance between playing it safe and ensuring the future of the colony.
Hedging their bets in an unpredictable world.
Exactly.
Okay, you ready to get your mind blown a little bit?
Always.
Hit me. Let's talk about this genetic caste system, because this is where things get really wild.
Oh yeah, buckle up. This isn't your typical ant story.
Okay.
In some red harvester ant populations, including our friend Pogonomyrmex barbatus, an ant's fate queen or worker, it isn't determined by, their upbringing or anything they do. It's decided at birth by their genes.
Wow. So much for working your way up the ant ladder, huh?
Nope, it's all about your lineage.
It's all about who your parents are.
Exactly. There are two distinct lineages within these populations, and they're entirely interdependent. So a queen, she mates with males from both her own lineage and the other, producing two types of offspring. Those fathered by males from her lineage, future queens.
Oh, wow.
But if the father is from the other lineage, worker ant it is.
Wow. Talk about a genetic lottery with some pretty high stakes.
Right. The ultimate nature versus nurture debate settled right at birth.
So how did such a strange system even come about?
Well, that's where things get even more intriguing. Research suggests that this genetic caste determination, or GCD for short, might be the result of hybridization.
Hybridization, you mean like two different ant species getting hitched? You're pulling my leg.
No, I'm serious. Scientists believe that way back when, our red harvester ant, P. barbatus, may have hybridized with a close relative, the Pogonomyrmex rugosus. And somehow, from that genetic mixing, this unique GCD system arose.
Wow, a regular ant family reunion. But here's what blows my mind. These two lineages, they're not just genetically different, like from their parent species, but they're really good at staying that way.
You're right. Studies have shown that even when these GCD lineages live near their parent species, there's very little interbreeding going on.
Huh.
They've developed these ways to keep their lineages separate, like different mating times, and even something called assortative mating.
Assortative mating, what's that?
It's basically where they prefer to mate within their own kind.
Oh, so like an exclusive ant club.
In a way, yeah. And it gets even more complex when you consider the research on their DNA methylation patterns.
DNA methylation. Okay, time for a quick science lesson.
Think of it as a chemical tag, a methyl group that attaches to DNA and changes how genes are expressed without actually changing the DNA sequence itself.
Oh, okay, so a kind of on or off switch for certain genes.
Precisely. And research on red harvester ants shows some really interesting differences in DNA methylation between queens and workers, as well as between the two GCD lineages. It suggests that DNA methylation could be playing a part in those different behaviors and characteristics we observe.
Fascinating.
And remember how we were talking about their foraging being affected by hydration?
Right, yeah.
Well, it's not just about water.
Okay.
Turns out temperature plays a big role, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so on top of worrying about drying out, they've got to watch out for overheating.
Oh, man. These ants have tough jobs.
Yeah, no kidding. But they're masters of adaptation.
Okay.
Studies have found that as the temperature rises, red harvester ants actually speed up their foraging.
Interesting.
Basically, trying to get in and out of the heat as fast as possible.
Like a desert dash for snacks.
Exactly.
But there's got to be a limit to how much they can push themselves, right?
Oh, absolutely. They can only handle so much heat. Their critical thermal maximum, or CT max, is about 50 degrees Celsius.
Okay. Anything hotter than that, and they risk, losing coordination, even dying.
Wow.
So it's a fine line between getting the most foraging done and avoiding heat stroke.
Right.
It's amazing how these colonies balance it all.
It really is, yeah. But speaking of foraging, how do they even find the best food sources in what seems like just a barren desert?
Well, that's where their incredible chemical communication skills come into play.
Okay.
Red harvester ants, like many ant species, are they're experts at using pheromones.
Pheromones, right.
Yeah, think of them as chemical signals they release to kind of talk to each other.
Oh, so like their own secret ant language.
Exactly. And they have different pheromones for different messages. For example, trail pheromones.
Okay.
Those mark the route to good food sources so they can send their buddies to help collect. They also have alarm pheromones, specifically a chemical called 4-methyl-3-heptanone.
Wow. You just pulled that out of nowhere.
Well, got all of a good chemical name.
Impressed. But that's their 911 signal if danger's near.
Oh, wow. So it's like a chemical alarm system.
Right. And while the research is ongoing, scientists believe pheromones might play a role in colony recognition and defending their territory as well.
It's incredible how such tiny creatures have developed this whole complex communication system.
It really is remarkable.
Yeah. But we've talked a lot about their behavior and their social structure.
Yeah.
What about their role in the environment? They're not just running around for themselves, are they?
No, not at all. Red harvester ants are actually crucial for their ecosystems. One of their most important contributions is seed dispersal.
Oh, right, yeah.
They gather and store seeds, and while they do eat a lot of them, they also end up spreading some seeds around their foraging area,
Okay.
helping plants reproduce.
So like accidental gardeners.
Yeah, you could say that, but their impact goes beyond just helping plants. They influence the types of plants that grow in an area, and their foraging can even change the soil structure.
Wow. Pretty impressive for such small creatures.
Right. They're tiny but mighty ecosystem engineers.
With all the research that's been done on these ants, like what are we actually learning from them?
That's a great question. Red harvester ants have become a really valuable model organism for scientists studying all kinds of fascinating topics.
Okay.
They're helping us understand things like the evolution of social behavior,
Mm-hmm.
the genetic basis of their unique caste system,
Right.
and even the role of epigenetics, remember DNA methylation,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in development and behavior.
So they're not just cool to watch. They're like unlocking secrets about the fundamentals of life itself.
Exactly. And because they're so sensitive to environmental changes, they're particularly important to study as our planet faces new challenges.
Okay.
By understanding how they adapt to things like drought and rising temperatures, we might gain insights into the resilience of other social insects and maybe even learn something about the broader impacts of climate change.
It's wild to think like these tiny ants could hold clues to some of the biggest questions about our world today.
It's true, they're like these little windows into bigger ecological processes.
But it's also really cool. There are other Pogonomyrmex species out there like P. rugosus and P. occidentalis with their own fascinating stories.
You're right. The Pogonomyrmex genus it's incredibly diverse with over 60 known species.
Wow.
And each one has its own unique adaptations, behaviors, and ecological roles.
A whole world of ant drama waiting to be explored.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Didn't we mention earlier how red harvester ant males mark their mating spots with secretions?
Yeah.
Well, in some Pogonomyrmex species, these mating spots can be up in bushes or trees, not just on the ground.
You're right. Yeah. They get pretty creative.
Wow.
And speaking of mating, did you know some Pogonomyrmex species engage in hilltopping?
Hilltopping, what's that?
So males gather on high spots like, hilltops or even tall buildings
No kidding.
to improve their chances of meeting females during mating flights. It's like an ant singles bar with a view.
Now that's just hilarious. Makes you wonder what other bizarre mating rituals are happening out there in the ant world.
Right. It's a whole other level of anthropology we could get into.
Oh man. Okay, well, so we've got hilltopping. What else we got?
Well, there's the Pogonomyrmex maricopa, known for their aggressive behavior.
Okay.
They raid other ant colonies, even those of different species, stealing resources and brood.
Wow. So like the Vikings of the ant world.
Exactly, ruthless raiders.
Wow. And then are there any others?
Yeah, and then there are the social parasites like Pogonomyrmex anergismus.
What do those guys do?
They sneak into other ant colonies and trick the host workers into raising their young.
Oh wow, that's kind of sneaky.
Yeah, they're masters of deception.
So it's a whole soap opera
It really is.
of drama, survival, and intrigue.
Oh yeah. The ant world is full of it. But let's circle back to our red harvester ants for a second.
Okay, yeah.
We've learned so much about their behavior, their genetics, their role in the ecosystem.
Right.
But there's always more to uncover, right?
I'm sure, yeah. Like what else don't we know about them?
Well, we talked about the workers' pheromone communication.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the queen? How does she manage to keep such a large colony in check?
Yeah. What's her secret?
Well, research suggests she might release her own special pheromones
Okay.
that actually suppress the other female's ability to reproduce,
Wow.
making sure she's the only one laying eggs.
Wow. So like a chemical crown to maintain order.
Exactly, a chemical monarchy. And then there's the whole question of how these complex ant colonies will adapt as the environment changes around them. With climate change affecting weather patterns and resource availability, how will the red harvester ants cope?
That is a big question.
It is.
Especially, knowing how these ants are practically fine-tuned to their environment.
Right.
Like what happens if their perfectly timed routines get thrown off by a climate curveball?
Yeah, that's what scientists are trying to understand.
Right.
There's research suggesting that some red harvester ant groups might be more at risk than others.
Okay.
Think about the ones at higher elevations where it's already cooler.
Yeah.
If things heat up even more, they might not have as much room to adapt.
Yeah. Living on the edge and climate change is kind of nudging them closer to that edge.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in.
But it's not just about surviving though, right? It's
Right.
like their whole social structure, how they divide tasks, even having babies, it's all tied to the environment.
Exactly. Yeah. If hotter temperatures mess with their foraging,
Yeah.
the whole colony dynamic could be thrown off. Imagine not being able to get enough food or keep up with nest maintenance or even, raise young ants properly.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for trouble.
Like a domino effect with climate change starting the chain reaction.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And then there's their role in the bigger picture too.
Right.
What happens to plants that depend on them for spreading seeds? What about other creatures, whether they compete with the ants or rely on them for food?
Yeah, it's this intricate web of connections.
Yeah.
So even a small change in one area can have these ripple effects.
Wow.
That's why studying these ants is so important.
Yeah.
They're not just fascinating on their own.
Right.
They give us this window into how ecosystems either cope or crumble when things change around them.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how it's all connected.
It is, yeah.
And how much we still don't know about the natural world,
Right.
even when it comes to something as seemingly simple as an ant.
Exactly. And who knows what other secrets these red harvester ants are holding on to.
Right.
One thing's for sure, their story's far from over.
And on that note,
Yeah.
we've reached the end of our deep dive into the incredible world of the red harvester ant.
Fascinating creatures.
We've explored their intricate social structures, their remarkable ability to survive in a harsh environment, and the unique genetic legacy that shapes their lives.
We've uncovered their impressive adaptations, their crucial role in the desert ecosystem,
Right.
and even caught a glimpse of the challenges that they face in a changing world.
But here's a final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
We've seen firsthand how attuned these ants are to their surroundings.
For sure.
Even subtle changes in temperature or moisture can ripple through their colonies.
Yeah.
So if we could look ahead, I wonder what might their story tell us about our own ability to adapt and thrive as our world continues to change.
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep your curiosity buzzing.